Hi, welcome to Oaklandside 510. I'm Tasneem Raja, editor-in-chief at the Oaklandside, Oakland's independent nonprofit newsroom. This week, our main story is about sex trafficking in Oakland. What's changing? What's working? What's now at risk? I'll talk with public safety reporter Roselyn Romero. Then I'm going to catch you up on some other recent stories from our newsroom. A show at Oakland's oldest queer bar that's become a sanctuary for immigrant expression right now. How Mayor Barbara Lee is using private fundraising to fill gaps in city services. Road safety fixes coming to one of West Oakland's most dangerous streets. New food spots, and a celebration of Betty Reid Soskin. Before all that, a word from a local company supporting this podcast. Support for this podcast comes from the law office of Scott Herndon, a boutique law firm based in Berkeley, representing survivors of high-profile personal injury, sexual assault, and sexual harassment cases across the state of California. Scott's law firm draws on the rich academic heritage of Cal and Stanford, where he taught philosophy before representing survivors in our community, Silicon Valley, and Los Angeles. Information about Scott's practice is available at scottherndonlaw.com. Herndon is Herdon. All right, now let's turn to this week's main story. Sex trafficking has been a big problem in Oakland for decades. A stretch of International Boulevard in East Oakland, known as The Blade, has been a hub for commercial sexual exploitation going back to the 1970s. But in recent years, the city has shifted its approach to this public safety crisis. And in the past several months, this approach has informed new legislation, a new mobile health clinic, and a growing chorus of young people demanding to be heard. To walk us through all of it, I am joined by Roselyn Romero, our public safety reporter at Oaklandside, who has been covering this issue closely for well over a year now. Roselyn, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I always like to start with definitions. I just want to start with the basics here. What is sex trafficking?
That's a great question. So sex trafficking is when an exploiter uses force, fraud, or coercion to make someone perform commercial sex. Mm-hmm. Anyone under the age of 18 engaged in commercial sex work is considered to be a victim of sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. Adults can be victims of sex trafficking. When an adult willingly takes part in commercial sex, many people consider this sex work, not trafficking. Mm-hmm. And some argue that sex work shouldn't be criminalized, but California law still considers sex work illegal and defines it as prostitution.
Okay, so let's focus on sex trafficking, which virtually everyone agrees is a major public safety issue. So I think a lot of people have a very specific picture in their heads of what sex trafficking looks like. And from your reporting, I've learned that picture is pretty wrong.
Yeah, really wrong. I covered a town hall on this issue in late January, where teens and young adults spoke directly to city and county leaders, including Mayor Barbara Lee. Mm-hmm. One of the things that struck me was how clearly the young people there described how trafficking actually happens. It's not always happening on the streets, right? It often happens through social media, through a boyfriend or a friend, through someone in the home.
Yeah.
One attendee, a woman named Swyla Kai, pointed out that it can happen in massage places, smoke shops, and gas stations.
Yeah.
A faculty instructor at Samuel Merritt University named Sarah Koster also made the point that it's not always someone scooping you off the street in a white windowless van, right? It can look like substance use disorder or disappearing for long periods of time.
So basically, it can be hiding in plain sight. And it's not primarily an issue of stranger danger.
Exactly. And the law has been shifting to reflect that as well. So in 2016, California passed a law, Senate Bill 1322, decriminalizing prostitution and related charges for minors so that young people in these situations are treated as victims rather than criminals. Mm-hmm. Before that law passed, police in Alameda County were arresting an average of 40 minors each year on suspicion of prostitution. I've also reported on how Oakland Unified has been trying to get ahead of this in schools. OUSD is one of only 8 school districts in the country to receive a federal grant specifically for human trafficking prevention education.
Wow.
$500,000 a year from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Wow. So tell us what that program actually looks like in practice.
So I interviewed Amba Johnson, who manages that program for OUSD. The curriculum starts as early as kindergarten with age-appropriate lessons about safe touch and identifying trusted adults. Yeah. And it builds from there. By middle school, students are shown videos about what grooming looks like. And the focus here isn't on scaring kids. It's about teaching them to recognize when something feels wrong and how to respond. Yeah. Johnson told me that in 20 years of doing this work, not one teenager has ever come to her and said, I'm being exploited. Yeah. That language is too abstract. It can be very academic. So the program at OUSD is really about building that awareness early on and giving children the language to identify what is and isn't okay.
Got it. So, Roselyn, can you tell us who is most at risk in Oakland?
Records from Alameda County show that Black people make up 61% of human trafficking victims, compared to 15% Latino and 12% white. And over half of Alameda County human trafficking survivors were in foster care at some point in their lifetime. Oh, wow. Yeah. So in a recent survey of 230 Bay Area sex trafficking survivors ages 25 and under, 70% reported experiencing housing insecurity. 60% said they had no personal income. Dr. Aisha Mays founded the Oakland nonprofit that organized that town hall I was talking about in January. It's called the Dream Youth Clinic, and it works with vulnerable people in Oakland. Dr. Mays put it very clearly at that town hall. Sex trafficking is a public health issue, and in Oakland, it's a Black girl health issue.
Right. Now, I know you've reported on another nonprofit in Oakland that has been doing survivor support work with that specific community for nearly 2 decades.
Yes, and that organization is called MISSY, which stands for Motivating, Inspiring, Supporting, and Serving Sexually Exploited Youth. It was founded back in 2007, and it was Oakland's first survivor-led, survivor-informed nonprofit in this space. Wow. And so over its 18-year history, MISSY has supported more than 13,000 girls and gender-expansive youth. Their headquarters is on 55th Avenue in East Oakland, so relatively close to the Blade. Yeah. And it includes transitional housing, a daycare for survivors with children, and a health clinic.
So who runs it? Who runs MISSY?
The heart of MISSY's approach is hiring people with lived experience. So I spoke with a youth engagement specialist named Michelle Badu, who was herself sexually exploited for over 15 years. She told me that her ability to connect with clients comes directly from having lived through what they're living through. Yeah. Youth engagement specialists work with survivors for up to 30 days, listening, connecting them to resources. But if someone needs more support after those 30 days, they're referred to a transformation coach for 3, 6, or 9 months of intensive case management.
Wow. Okay. So to sum it up, it sounds like Oakland's approach to sex trafficking today is very much about offering resources to survivors.
Right. Like Dr. Mays says, many view it as a public health issue, and they're mobilizing healthcare, housing, counseling, and other resources to try and break harmful cycles.
Okay, so now let's talk about the policy side of things. What have you been seeing going on at City Hall?
As recently as January, Councilmember Charlene Wong held a press conference to announce a proposal to create what she is calling a human trafficking survivor support fund. Wong represents District 2, which includes the Blade. And Mayor Barbara Lee appointed her to lead the city's Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. So the idea behind this survivor support fund is to impose new fines against buyers of commercial sex and businesses where exploitation takes place. So the fines look like up to $2,500 against certain hotels or motels, and up to $4,000 against buyers for the first violation. That money would go directly to Oakland organizations providing services to survivors, such as housing, legal support, job training, and mental health resources.
You know, one thing I noticed, Roselyn, from your story was that Wong made clear this is personal for her.
It really is. At that press conference, she said she was once a child who was sexually abused in the home. And that was really significant. It shows that she brings a deep understanding of the type of support survivors need, especially since she is one. So on the enforcement side, interim police chief James Beer announced OPD was more than doubling its officer presence along International Boulevard and deploying undercover officers. By early February, 37 men had been arrested on suspicion of sex trafficking, either as buyers or exploiters. Beer also noted that 65% of the people arrested were from neighboring cities, not from Oakland.
So this kind of feels like a shift from the ways that we have thought about sex trafficking in, different eras and different times. Right now, enforcement is focused on buyers and traffickers, not on people being exploited.
Exactly. And that's the whole philosophy shift that's been in the works for a few years now. Going after demand rather than criminalizing the young people and the adults being exploited. That came through really clearly at the Dream Youth Clinic Town Hall on January 28th. About 40 community members and local leaders packed the clinic's office near Jack London Square. Mayor Barbara Lee was there, Alameda County Supervisor Nikki Fortunato Boss was there, and Councilmember Wong as well. The young people were really direct about what they need. More funding for organizations providing shelter, jobs, and mental health services. One speaker, a 17-year-old named LJ, talked about navigating the foster care system and having to advocate for herself and fight for support because it was riddled with long wait lists. Another attendee, a youth leader with Dream Youth Clinic named Miaje Turrentine, said that she wishes Oakland schools could implement programs teaching kids how to self-regulate.
Now, I know that Dream Youth Clinic also launched something new to meet people where they are, not necessarily, waiting for people to come into their offices. Tell us more about that.
Right. So there is now a mobile health clinic right on the Blade at the corner of International Boulevard and 15th Avenue. So that launched in January. And Dr. Mays, the founder of Dream Youth Clinic, says that it is the first of its kind in Oakland. So the mobile health clinic operates on Tuesdays and Fridays. It offers free HIV testing, STI testing, pregnancy testing, birth control, condoms, menstrual products, fentanyl test strips, and naloxone, the opioid reversal medication. No insurance is required and no one is turned away.
Now, I know that you actually went and checked that out recently. Like, paint a picture for us. What was it like?
So it didn't feel like a clinic at all, actually. So there was R&B music playing, there were snacks, there were colorful flyers everywhere. There were two small tents. So one was for medical testing, and then another one where young people could speak privately with a staff member about referrals for housing, legal support, and other resources. There was also a community ambassador present for unarmed security and de-escalation if it came to that. Staff told me that the welcoming setup was intentional. They want young people to feel comfortable enough to approach. Also, to encourage HIV testing specifically, they offer gift cards to a business of the young person's choosing.
So clearly there's a lot of real momentum here, like new things are getting off the ground, happening in ways we've never seen in Oakland. It's not all good news. Our colleague Ashley McBride reported something just this week that, complicates this picture a bit.
Unfortunately, yes. So Ashley reported that a school-based violence intervention program operating at several OUSD high schools is about to lose its funding. For nearly 4 years, Oakland's Department of Violence Prevention has funded violence interruption and prevention teams at schools like Castlemont, Fremont, McClymonds, Dewey Academy, Ralph Bunche Academy, and Rudsdale. After promising early results, OUSD expanded that program to Skyline and Oakland Tech, the district's two biggest schools, starting in the 2024-2025 school year. But the city only committed funding through this school year. And that cliff has arrived right as OUSD is trying to close a $100 million budget deficit. The plan was to have OUSD take on the funding responsibility, but unfortunately, district leaders have not come up with a way to sustain it.
Roselyn, this is different, though, from the programs you were talking about earlier, right? Related to elementary and middle school kids?
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
Got it. So these high school teams, can you tell us just like what's at stake here? What are they doing?
Yeah, first let's talk about what each team is comprised of. So each team includes a violence interrupter, a life coach, and this is the key piece, a gender-based violence specialist.
Wow.
Who works specifically with young people experiencing domestic violence or sex trafficking. The teams also host trainings on sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, and dating violence. So these are people really embedded in Oakland high schools, building relationships with students, doing exactly the kind of early intervention work that Amba Johnson described. The city provided more than $8 million over 4 years to support these teams.
Wow.
And an evaluation by the Urban Institute found real results. Schools with teams saw a more than 10-point drop in chronic absenteeism, a decrease in suspensions for violence, while suspensions for violence actually increased at schools without teams.
I mean, that's remarkable.
It really is. Among students receiving life coaching, 47% met all of their goals, and another 10% met at least one. Joe Griffin, the executive director of Youth Alive, one of the primary nonprofits staffing these teams, told Ashley that options for continuing beyond this year are unclear. And Youth Alive may be on its own to find a new funding source.
Roselyn, what would you say is like the through line connecting all of this? You've been reporting on this issue for really over a year now. What kind of, how do you sort of make sense of what ties it all together?
That's a great question. Oakland has made real progress in how it thinks about this issue.
Yeah.
Moving away from treating exploited people, especially youth, as criminals, and toward recognizing them as survivors who deserve resources and support.
Yeah.
That's showing up in a mobile clinic on the Blade, in a survivor fund created by a city council member, and in young people speaking directly to the mayor and county leaders. But at the same time, some of the infrastructure that makes that work possible in schools, in communities, is now at risk. The funding cliff for these high school-based teams is a real test of whether the momentum holds.
Absolutely. I know that you and your editor will be paying attention to that and, letting us all know what results here. Roselyn, thank you so much for this really important reporting.
Thanks for having me, Tasneem.
You can find all of Roselyn's reporting on this issue at oakandside.org. We'll link to everything in the show notes. All right, let's get into some other recent reporting from our newsroom. There's more in the full stories, which we will link to in the show notes, and you can always find at oakandside.org. Sign up for our daily newsletter if you want to get our reporting in your inbox. Okay, let's start with a really great story about Oakland's White Horse Bar. The oldest continuously operating queer bar in the country, open since 1933, which has become a site of resistance through its monthly Caballo Blanco drag show. So freelance reporter Jesslyn Goss profiled performer Hillary Rivers, who was detained by ICE last June at a scheduled immigration court appointment in San Francisco. Rivers spent nearly 3 months in custody. She lost her job, her housing, her car, before being granted asylum and released in September. She made her return to the stage at Whitehorse in November, performing in platform heels despite a leg injury that had worsened without medical attention while she was in detention. The show features an entirely migrant cast and happens the first Friday of every month. Whitehorse owner Patty Nishimura Dingle puts it simply, there's a lot of fear in the community right now, and making sure that people know the bar is a safe space has never felt more important. Okay, let's turn to City Hall. Mayor Barbara Lee has been using a fundraising tool called behested payments. This is where public officials can solicit private donations on behalf of third parties to help fill in gaps in city services. So since taking office last May, Lee has raised millions from corporations and foundations. Here's a big recent example. PG&E and Kaiser Permanente agreed to pay $900,000 to resurrect Oakland's police cadet program. Mayor Lee also established the One Oakland Fund through the East Bay Community Foundation, which launched with over 30 philanthropic partners and $650,000 in seed funding. For context, former Mayor Libby Schaaf raised $43 million through behested payments in over 5 years. Lee is still ramping up. The big open question that our reporter Eli Wolf raises, whether Lee will run for re-election and provide the continuity that keeps these private dollars flowing. Okay, there's some good news on street safety in West Oakland from our reporter Jose Fermoso. The Oakland Department of Transportation is moving ahead with a long-planned redesign of 18th Street, one of the area's most dangerous corridors. So the plan calls for a road diet, reducing the street from 4 lanes to 2, adding buffered bike lanes, pedestrian safety islands, and new crosswalks. This project has been in the works for years, funded by a state cap and trade grant. So that's a climate resilience program that takes money from greenhouse gas emitting activities and directs it to greener infrastructure. If community outreach on this program goes well, construction is expected to begin this summer. Okay, from our Nosh food reporting desk, James Beard-nominated pastry chef Melissa Joe has launched Grand Opening Bakery out of a West Oakland kitchen at 2311 Magnolia Street. She's currently taking pre-orders, including for black sesame almond cake with blood orange, a strawberry lychee cheese tart, and a burnt honey pie. No walk-up hours just yet, but stay tuned. And over in Temescal, the Oyster Bar, formerly known as Small Change, has reopened as Ace Seafood with cooked and raw oysters, pickled mussels, wine, and beer. Okay, to close us out here, finally, a celebration of life for Betty Reid Soskin will be held on Saturday, March 1st at the Henry J. Kaiser Center for the Arts in Oakland. Soskin, who I'm sure you know, retired as the nation's oldest park ranger, died this December at age 104. The free event starts at 2 p.m. and is hosted by the Rosie the Riveter Trust. But you do need to reserve a ticket. Recordings of Soskin's original songs will be played, along with tributes from people whose lives she touched. We'll have a link to tickets in the show notes. That's this week's episode of Oaklandside 510. You can find all the stories we talked about today at oaklandside.org. Sign up for our daily newsletter to get this reporting delivered straight to your inbox. If you haven't already, you've heard me say it before, I'll say it again. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen. Share it with your Oakland friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your mailman. The more people listening, the more we can justify keeping this show going. This episode was produced by Mark Nieto, edited by Darwin Bongram, and hosted by me, Oaklandside Editor-in-Chief, Tasneem Raja. On behalf of our entire newsroom, thank you for showing up for Oakland. We will see you next week.